little glass slipper. There was once a very rich gentleman who lost his wife, and having loved her exceedingly, he was very sorry when she died. Finding himself quite unhappy for her loss, he resolved to marry a second time, hoping he would be as happy as before. Unfortunately, however, the lady he chanced to meet was the proudest and most arrogant woman ever known. She would complain about everyone. Nobody would please her. She had 2 daughters by a former husband. These she brought up to be proud and idle. Indeed, in temper and behavior, they perfectly resembled their mother. They did not love their books and would not learn to work. In short, they were disliked by everybody. The gentleman had a daughter who, in sweetness of temper, was the exact likeness of her own mother, whose death had broken their hearts. He adored his little daughter and hoped that a new wife would be a good mother for her, which a man knows a child needs. But scarcely was the marriage ceremony over before his wife began to show her real temper. She could not bear the pretty little girl, because her sweet, obliging manners made those of her own daughters appear 1,000 times the more odious and disagreeable. She therefore ordered her to live in the kitchen, and if ever she brought anything into the parlour, always scolded her till she was out of sight. She made her work with the servants in washing the dishes and cleaning the tables and chairs, and she was forced to clean her madame's chamber. The cruel new stepmother gave the best chambers in the house to her own daughters, forcing her husband's dear daughter to sleep up in a sorry little attic, upon a wretched straw bed, without curtains or anything to make her comfortable. The poor child bore this with the greatest patience, not daring to complain to her father, who, she feared, would only shout at her, for she saw that his wife controlled him entirely. When she had done all her work, she used to sit in the chimney corner among the cinders, so that in the house she went by the name of Cinderella. It happened that the king's son gave a ball, to which he invited all the persons of fashion in the country. Cinderella's stepsisters were included in the invitation, for the king's son did not know how disagreeable they were. He did not invite Cinderella, for he had never seen or heard of her. The 2 sisters began immediately to be very busy in preparing for the happy day. Nothing could exceed their joy. Every moment of their time was spent in fancying such gowns, shoes, and headdresses as would set them off to the greatest advantage. All this was new vexation to poor Cinderella, for it was she who ironed and plaited her sisters' linens. They talked of nothing but how they should be dressed.
"I,"
said the eldest,
"will wear my scarlet velvet with French trimming." "And I,"
said the youngest,
"shall wear the same petticoat I had made for the last ball. But then, to make amends for that, I shall put on my gold muslin train and wear my diamonds in my hair."
They sent for the best hairdresser that was to be had, and all their ornaments were bought at the most fashionable shops. On the morning of the ball, they called up Cinderella to consult with her about their dress, for they knew she had a great deal of taste. Cinderella gave them the best advice she could, and even offered to assist in adjusting their headdresses, which was exactly what they wanted, and they accordingly accepted her proposal. While Cinderella was busily dressing her sisters, they said to her,
"Should you not like, Cinderella, to go to the ball?"
"Ah," replied Cinderella,
"You are only laughing at me. It is not for such as I am to think of going to balls." "You are in the right," said they. "Folks might laugh indeed to see a cinder soot dancing in a ballroom."
Any other than Cinderella would have tried to make the haughty creatures look as ugly as she could. But the sweet-tempered girl, on the contrary, did everything she could think of to make them look beautiful. The sisters had scarcely eaten anything for 2 days, so great was their joy as the happy day drew near. More than a dozen laces were broken in endeavouring to give them a fine, slender shape, and they were always before the looking-glass. At length, the much-wished-for moment arrived. The proud misses stepped into a beautiful carriage, and followed by servants in rich liveries, drove towards the palace. Cinderella followed them with her eyes as far as she could, and when they were out of sight, she sat down in a corner and began to cry. Her godmother, who saw her tears, asked her what ailed her.
I wish,
sobbed poor Cinderella, without being able to say another word. The godmother, who was a fairy, said to her,
"You wish to go to the ball, Cinderella. Is not this the truth?" Oh, but yes,"
replied the poor child, sobbing still more than before.
Well, be a good girl,"
said the godmother,
"and you shall go."
She then led Cinderella to her bedchamber and said to her,
"Run into the garden and bring me a pumpkin."
Cinderella flew like lightning and brought the finest she could lay hold of. The godmother scooped out the inside, leaving nothing but the rind. She then struck it with her wand, and the pumpkin instantly became a fine coach, gilded all over with gold. She then looked into a mouse-trap, where she found 6 mice, all alive and brisk. She told Cinderella to lift up the door of the trap very gently, and as the mice passed out, she touched them one by one with her wand, and each immediately became a beautiful horse of a fine dapple-grey mouse colour.
"Here, my child,"
said the godmother,
"is a coach and horses too, as handsome as your sisters. But what shall we do for a coachman?" "I will run and see if there be not a rat in the trap. If I find one, he will do very well for a coachman,"
replied Cinderella.
"Well thought of, my child,"
said her godmother.
"Make what haste you can."
Cinderella brought the rat trap, which, to her great joy, contained 3 of the largest rats ever seen. The fairy chose the one which had the largest beard, and touching him with her wand, he was instantly turned into a handsome coachman, with the finest pair of whiskers imaginable. She next said to Cinderella,
"Go again into the garden, and you will find 6 lizards behind the watering pot. Bring them hither."
This was no sooner done than with a stroke from the fairy's wand, they were changed into 6 footmen. The fairy then said to Cinderella,
"Well, my dear, is not this such a perfect coach? You could wish for nothing better to take you to the ball. Are you not delighted with it?" Yes,"
replied Cinderella with hesitation.
"But must I go there in these filthy rags?"
Her godmother touched her with the wand, and her rags instantly became the most magnificent apparel, ornamented with the most costly jewels in the whole world. To these she added a beautiful pair of glass slippers, waved goodbye as dear Cinderella set out for the palace. The fairy, however, before she took leave of Cinderella, strictly charged her, on no account whatever, to stay at the ball after the clock had struck 12, telling her that, should she stay but a single moment after that time, her coach would again become a pumpkin, her horses mice, her footmen lizards, and her fine clothes be changed to filthy rags. Cinderella did not fail to promise all her godmother desired of her, and, almost wild with joy, drove away to the palace.